Dr. Phillips, let me thank you so much for your time this afternoon. There's been a lot of talk, especially since last week, as we're talking to some of our viewers who are wondering what is going on, particularly in areas like Johannesburg, for example. A number of residents say that they're still without water. And, you know, when we speak to various entities, they look at the infrastructure as the problem here. But others are saying that things might be, deeper than that. There could be some leadership issues there. What have you observed?
Good evening, Bongiwe, and good evening to all your viewers. These water supply disruptions in Gauteng and Johannesburg are not new. You will recall that they also happened last year. The fundamental underlying problem is that demand for water has increased in Gauteng rapidly. There's been a huge increase in the population of Gauteng, and also the leaks in the municipal distribution systems have increased. And those two factors have resulted in a huge increase in demand for water. We anticipated that, and we planned for the second phase of the Lesotho Highlands project, which is now under construction, but unfortunately it's overdue. So currently there isn't enough water in the Vaal River system to draw water sustainably from, and for Randwater to treat, to supply to the Gauteng municipalities to meet the peaks in demand, such as we have now with the heatwave, and also when there are supply disruptions due to, for example, electrical faults, which occurred in Johannesburg recently. What happens then is that when Randwater is no longer able to pump water because of an electrical fault, then the reservoirs run low in the municipalities like Johannesburg, and then it's difficult for the water to get to the high-lying areas, and then the high-lying areas go without water for a period of time. And it takes a long time for the reservoir levels to stabilize again, because the demand is so high that it draws down the water levels in the reservoirs just as quickly as Randwater can fill them.
And Dr. Phillips, there's also, of course, the view by one person who's been monitoring this, who works with water, the CEO of the Water Chamber, was speaking to us last week, who says that it's further compounded by the infrastructure. It doesn't seem like it's also working properly, according to him, or even has enough capacity to handle this growing demand.
Well, if you look at Johannesburg as an example, the infrastructure isn't as bad as it is in some other cities like in eThekwini. Johannesburg has been doing a relatively good job of maintaining its infrastructure, but still not good enough. So the percentage of water that leaks out of Johannesburg's distribution system is 33%, whereas in eThekwini it's 46%. So that the 33% that leaks in Johannesburg is not good enough. They need to bring that down to 20%. Or even less, and then there'll be more water available to provide to people, and when there are peaks in demand, then it won't have the effects that it's currently having if they can bring down demand by reducing the leaks in the system. Joburg Water is also doing involved in a number of projects which they're currently implementing to improve their water infrastructure, not only in terms of maintenance to address leaks, but also, for example, to build more reservoirs so they have more storage capacity so that they're better able to deal with these peaks in demand.
And also, Dr. Phillips, I wonder then how much of a further complication does it add to this picture? Because when you speak to Randwater, for example, they also talk about how they're now going to be cutting off some municipalities who are not paying. Some of the municipalities are also saying that revenue collection is a bit of a challenge, as well as some of the residents aren't paying for some of the services. How much of a further complication does this add to this picture as well?
Well, Johannesburg is quite good at paying Randwater, so Randwater is not restricting water supply to Johannesburg.
I mean, in terms of the rest of the country, forgive me, in terms of the rest of the country. Yeah.
Okay. So some of the smaller municipalities in Gauteng, like Empoleni, are not paying Randwater for the water, so Randwater has been restricting their water supply. And in other areas, such as, for example, in the Free State in Mangaung, the Vaal Central Water Board has been implementing restrictions to some of the municipalities that it serves because they're not paying them. Basically, Bongiwe, in South Africa, water is supposed to be financially self-sustaining. Our water boards treat water on behalf of municipalities, but they don't get any money from government. They have to be run as a business, and they can only spend money that they get in revenue. So if the municipalities don't pay the water boards, then the water boards can't continue to provide treated water to the municipalities.
And that's a very serious concern. But Dr. Phillips, I'd like us to take one question from our viewer tonight, who has been very consistent with raising some of the issues where they are, and it's Mboniseni. He says, "Good evening, Bongiwe. For me, I just want to ask, what is he going to do?" And I suppose that's to you, about the vendor water situation, because many projects were started, but there's still no water.
There are many parts of the country still which don't have water supply. Since 1994, the government has made good progress in improving access to water infrastructure. In 1994, when we became a democracy, when apartheid ended, about 55% of the population didn't have access to piped water infrastructure. Now that's at about 90%. But there's still about 10% of the population who don't have access to piped water, and it's a priority for us to address that. We have quite a number of projects going with municipalities in Limpopo to address that, and some of them have been completed and have resulted in increased supply, but we're aware that there are still some communities which don't have access to water. One of the major projects that we're going to do in the Messina area, where there's been persistent water shortages and where some communities don't have water, is that we're going to be shortly entering into an agreement with Zimbabwe, which has excess water on its side of the border. It has water treatment works with excess water, and we're going to be purchasing that water from Zimbabwe to provide to Messina.
All right. And when is that likely to start?
We're going to be signing an agreement with the Zimbabweans later this week, and then after that, construction work will commence.
All right. Dr. Phillips, thank you so much for your time.